Michael Avenatti, extortion, embezzlement, theft, tax evasion. Remember when he mulled over running for president at one point? Well, many were swept up in the hope that something would come of the Stormy Daniels case against then-President Donald Trump. Now Avenatti is facing federal embezzlement charges, and he's decided to go with the toughest, highest-power attorney he can think of, himself. Avenatti's law license is now suspended after being convicted of extorting Nike for upwards of $25 million. His upcoming trial will cover prosecutors' claims that Avenatti lied to former clients about settlement details, essentially stealing whatever share he wanted from the settlement and awarding his clients a much smaller amount than they were entitled. Additionally, the trial will focus on bank and tax fraud charges. He allegedly didn't pay $3.2 million in payroll taxes for his Tully's coffee businesses and didn't file personal income tax forms from 2014 to 2017 and no tax forms for his law firms. He denies everything. Separately, Avenatti filed a motion regarding what he called improper and prejudicial media posts by former prosecutor Julian Andre. Avenatti claims Andre is posting on Twitter and other social media, publicly commenting and promoting misinformation. So, Ethan, do you know about these tweets?
Look, I don't know these tweets specifically, but here's the deal. If Andre is not actively engaged in the case representing one of the parties, you can comment on cases. This is ridiculous. So hang on. Here's what's happening with Avenatti. He's cornered. What happens when an animal is cornered? They lash out. In this case, what happens when you are a defendant who has lost now numerous cases? The $25 million extortion case against Nike. He's facing all these other legal matters, but he had a trial and lost in front of the State Bar of California. He's losing. He's in the wrong. He's going to throw everything out there in an effort to obfuscate, to distract from the real issues. It's not a good tactic. This is looking really, really bad for Michael Avenatti. But to claim that another attorney can't make comments on social media is patently false. Now, if the other attorney is making provably false statements against Michael Avenatti, he might have a case. But here's the deal with defamation. That's what we're talking about. If I am publicly making a false statement against somebody that causes them harm, to a group of people, and he's a public figure, which has a raised standard for defamation, the issue is he's likely judgment proof at this point. If you're a convicted mobster, people can say whatever they want about you. He's already lost the $25 million extortion case. This other attorney pretty much can say what he wants about Michael Avenatti.
So we're talking really about defamation, but he's using the term promoting misinformation. Is that not a thing?
Okay, so if you're an attorney representing a party in a matter, California Rules of Professional Conduct, Rule 4.1, and it's also the ABA Model Rules 4.1, which is adopted in many jurisdictions, says that you have to be, generally speaking, you have to be truthful, but it's a higher standard than even that. So the statement actually in Rule 4.1 is it says, in the course of representing a client, a lawyer shall not knowingly, which is its own higher standard, make a false statement of material fact or law to a third person, or fail to disclose a material fact to a third person when disclosure is necessary to avoid assisting a criminal or fraudulent act by a client. Here's the deal. You're supposed to be truthful when we deal with people, when we're representing a client. But the rule is an even higher standard. Material fact means gets to the heart of the case. So clearly this other attorney can't be doing that.
In addition to his charges in California, Avenatti is facing federal prosecution in New York, where he allegedly stole hundreds of thousands of dollars from Stormy Daniels related to a book project. Avenatti his law license has been suspended. How long would a law license typically be suspended? And does that mean that he's kind of just on his way to being disbarred? Or is being suspended something, in his case, could he be back in good standing?
So if you go to the California Bar Association's website now, there's like a red warning flag on his entry that beware. He has been suspended. He is not currently actively licensed to practice law in the state of California. And so what happens is when you get accused of something, the bar does an investigation, the state bar does. They have actual investigators, just like prosecutors in your district, your district attorneys. They have that. There are special attorneys who defend other attorneys in state bar proceedings. Interesting note, Amy, Michael Avenatti represented himself in the state bar trial. He has a suspended license. He was convicted by the state bar. He has had his license suspended because of these moral turpitude crimes that he committed against Nike. So will he lose it permanently? He hasn't yet, but the state bar is continuing to work on that. I would suggest, and just based on my knowledge, it's likely he will be actually disbarred.
And so he can't represent anyone else, but he is representing himself. And I've heard that judges especially don't like that. Why? What's so bizarre in this situation with Michael Avenatti is every attorney knows that judges strongly prefer not to have people represent themselves in pro per, right? That's what that's called. When you represent yourself in court, there's two major reasons why. Normally, it's because the average person doesn't understand all of the intricacies of how civil procedure or criminal procedure works. It's like whole courses of study in law school, and it takes people years in real practice to understand how the courts actually work and how you're supposed to file things properly, etc. But the other reason that judges don't like people representing themselves, especially not attorneys, is because we're not impartial then. We're not acting as members of the court anymore. Your judgment is clouded because it's your life at stake. It's what you have going on that's at stake. You're no longer going to necessarily operate as a high functioning attorney anymore because you're clouded because of your own personal investment and involvement. Why do you think Avenatti wants to represent himself knowing how judges generally feel about it?
I think he's desperate. I think he really is maybe really short on money. And I believe you watched him on TV a few times, right, Amy?
Yeah.
Hubris, absolute massive ego and hubris. He probably really thinks that he is the best attorney to defend himself. And there's not an attorney on earth that says, you ought to defend yourself. It's not good practice. It's really not good practice.
So you think it's pretty likely that he will lose?
I mean, as I look through the evidence, I don't see a defense. And we have some testimony already that has come out in his case with this alleged $4 million embezzlement of client funds. And it looks really bad for Michael Avenatti. I haven't seen anything yet in the testimony that I've seen that would suggest that he's not guilty. Everything I've seen says he's guilty, just like in the Nike case where he was convicted of extortion. Extortion means you said to somebody else that I'm going to turn you in unless you do this for me. And I have a pecuniary benefit, a financial benefit. He was convicted of that with Nike. And then he lost his bar license, or at least it's suspended for now. And then he has all these other allegations. This guy is in very serious trouble. By the way, I want to make a quick note. When we're talking about these legal issues, it's just intended to assist in spotting legal issues. But there are many factors to be considered when determining which actions and decisions would be most appropriate to any specific situation. So this is not specific advice to you and your situation. This show is not intended to substitute for legal advice. You should decide which course of action is best after discussing it thoroughly with an attorney. So the laws on these subjects are constantly changing. Information may not be relevant at a later time. If you would like to contact the Bearman firm, you may do so